Welcome to this week's episode of the Melanin Muses podcast, where we will discuss limiting beliefs and the stumbling blocks that life throws at you, how to push through these, how to accomplish your goals, and to live your best life with our guest muse, Omu Oblior. Omu is an international coach, speaker, and trainer. She started out as a founding member of the John Maxwell team that trains and certifies speakers, trainers, and coaches, and is now known as the Maxwell Leadership Team. She then went on to earn several other certifications to aid her in serving her clients better. Omu is currently an executive director and national trainer at Business Network International, or BNI. Outside of this, she also mentors young African girls and works with children living with cancer. Now, with that amazing introduction finished, let's begin and get into talking with our guest today. Hello, Omu.
Hi, Nikki. How are you?
I am wonderful and super excited to hear more about you. I know I just gave you that introduction, but can you please tell our audience more about you?
I was wondering who you were introducing. I was wondering if there were three of us here.
No, just me and you, girl. This background is just fabulous. So can you please share with us from your own words stuff that you do? Talk to our audience and our listener. Introduce yourself.
Okay, so like Nikki says, my name is Omu Obilor. I'm an international speaker, trainer, and a coach. And my journey started with the John Maxwell team. So obviously I have a lot to, I owe John Maxwell a lot. That was when my personal development journey started, because it actually started as a personal development journey. I didn't set out to become a speaker, trainer, or coach. I set out to develop myself, really. So that's how I started. And then obviously I went on to do several other certifications, which knowing what I know now, I did those certifications actually out of fear and the feeling of inadequacy. They've come in handy. I have no regrets that I did them. The only thing is, at the time I was doing them because I thought I needed them at that point. And that was the reason why I was doing it. Knowing what I know now, the reason why I was doing it then was because I felt inadequate, and I always felt a need to add one more certification, and felt that would put me in a better place. So I know better now.
And that inadequacy, do you feel like that has been a continuous drive as you move forward to keep doing more and more? Or has that shifted into this, oh, I want to do more because I want to, not because I feel inadequate?
Absolutely. So now I find out that I actually love learning. I mean, at the end of last month, I actually said I wasn't going to do any more courses. And I'm enrolling for one. And I wanted to jump on it in January. And I was like, no, just because they have like 3 or 4 start dates. And I said, okay, no, let me wait till middle of the year. In the past, I'll jump on it immediately and say to myself that if I didn't get it, every other thing wasn't going to work. I needed it for the others, all those things. But I've dealt with that part of me, and I'm a lot more objective. I ask myself questions, and I know why I'm taking a particular course or doing a particular training. I have clear reasons, clear objectives. I'm very clear on what I want to get out of it. I'm very clear of what how I want it to affect me as a person, how I want it to affect my business, and how I want to use it to help people in the area that I help people in.
And then, so how did you end up going from the mentality of, oh, I'm inadequate, I need to do more, to I'm doing this because, you know what, I actually love learning. I love being able to help people. I enjoy the skills that I'm gaining. What steps did you take to switch that mindset?
So, when you talk about the different levels of mastery, at some point in our lives, we operate under unconscious incompetence. And that was where I operated in for a very long time. Thankfully, even in that state, I would say that I was intentional about learning, and I was like a sponge. So it worked both ways for me. The knowledge isn't wasted, just that I can identify that I went into it for the wrong reasons. Thankfully, they're useful. Are there some that really are not useful? I wouldn't say they're not useful, but they don't apply to the line that I have told. But they're also very useful. I like to be able to contribute sensibly and positively and from a point of knowledge in other conversations, not necessarily in my niche. So I operated in that level for the longest time. And you know how you know something just isn't right? And you're not able to pinpoint it. So there's sometimes, I mean, I went from one coach to another. I attended a lot of conferences. And it's so bad that when a coach comes to me now, I can almost complete the sentence because so I think that it's not even so much as what you're hearing. There's timing also involved. There's timing. Sometimes you hear the right things at the wrong time and it just doesn't resonate. So it's like planting a seed. It's like planting the corn seed by the beach with the beach sand. It's not going to grow. There's nothing wrong with the seed and there's nothing wrong with the sand. It's just the wrong place that you have put the seed. So I think that I finally just found balance and everything started to make sense. And it's funny that when I go back and I look at my notes, especially when I'm preparing to coach someone or preparing a training, and I look back at my notes and I see some of them, and I see that these are things that were said to me maybe like 10 years ago. I'm like, what were you thinking? What did you think? So,
but at least that shows growth. Like, I love those
Absolutely.
moments. Like, even now when when it's coming to the end of the year, you're cleaning and decluttering, you're finding old things, and you start to find like old journals and stuff. You start saying, oh goodness, oh, did I really write that, or was that somebody else? But at least that shows like you're not the same person and you've actually developed and grown rather than staying stagnant. So that's wonderful that you were able to kind of reflect even within not just your personal life, but your professional life, that you've grown and developed your skills and your mentality, which is a great transition into our next question of coming to the Melanin Muses podcast today. We're going to touch on like limiting beliefs and pushing past like these stumbling blocks. Like, what prompted you to want to discuss these specific concepts on our episode today?
Okay, so like I said, I suffered a lot of limiting beliefs. I've also learned that, as far as I'm concerned, it's helped position me, and I've used it to my advantage. And it didn't. I don't think that it happened to me. I think it happened for me.
Yes.
So I say to people that you don't fail, you learn. So I'm learning, and it's helped me get to where I am today. Having worked with different people, and at some point I worked with a lot of coaches because I was a sales consultant for a top coach, and so I worked with a lot of coaches who were buying into programs. I found out that I wasn't the only one who was going through that, and 9 out of 10 people I spoke with didn't realize they were going through that because they were going to buy yet another program when they have like 10 programs, they haven't used any. And when you say to them, okay, so you have this program, how much have you made from it? Oh no, I'm waiting to buy this. And then when I finish this, I could actually see myself. That was where I was. And then I would have to go back. I was supposed to be selling, and I mean, that's me making money, but I couldn't watch someone make the same mistake that I made. So that's one of the reasons why I'm passionate about talking about it. Another reason is So like I said, when I look back, I know that I have learned, and I see opportunities I have missed, but I also see things that I have learned and what I have gained from it. If I didn't miss those opportunities, I probably wouldn't be well equipped to speak authoritatively the way that I do now. So I see young entrepreneurs in different areas of life, and it's easy to see someone's strengths and capabilities. A lot of times it takes a lot for you to see yours, especially where I come from. You're growing up and you're hearing those things like, personally, my family, where they would say, you shouldn't come out in the papers, don't keep posting your pictures or coming out in magazines, you're selling yourself, your work would sell for you. Don't talk about yourself. It means you're being proud, you're being pompous, you're looking down on people. So I had all those beliefs that if I came out to say I'm an international speaker, it was like boasting. So I went through all that, and I'm quick to see or notice it in other people because that's a route that I have been through. And I don't know that I want someone else to make the same mistake. One of my mentors, Joseph McClendon III, always says, he teaches us to go further faster. And I use that a lot when I'm talking to my clients as well. And why is it easy for me to make you go further faster? Because I've been down that route. So I'm helping you avoid those same mistakes. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Well, number one, thank you for giving an example and then how you overcame that. And not only did you provide an example and how you overcame it, but also allowing our listeners to find out, like, while you're doing this, of wanting to give back to people. And I think that's the biggest, most important thing about being successful and happy. Because I would love to know your perspective on this, but I feel like you can be successful, you can make all the money in the world, but it doesn't guarantee your happiness.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And
Yes.
it's funny you said that, because in the last 3 days, I actually have a kid I just finished speaking with now, and she's just 10. And I'd spoken with my son a few days ago. He's job hunting in the UK, and he wasn't getting the jobs he wanted, and he was trying to change. And I said, listen, follow your passion. He's like, no, I just want to make money. And then I said, money is not going to make you happy. He says, let me find out. If it doesn't make you happy, it makes me happy. And then I had this 10-year-old just a few hours ago who said the same thing to me, that, oh, she wants the money. And I'm like, what is it with this generation and money? And, I've thought of different ways of communicating to them that, at the end of the day, money really is not a guarantee for happiness.
100%. I think it's like some of that new mentality about money consists of like probably like the influencer generation of being able to travel and go through all these places and take those like snazzy photos and do expensive things. But I feel, yes, money is nice because it can buy experiences, it can buy like opportunities, like, hey, now I can go to Italy and explore this. But I feel like as long as you have a positive and genuine surrounding of people around you, it will make life more fulfilling, because at the end of the day, money is just paper. And it's who you connect with that's what makes your life most meaningful. Like, what are people going to say about you when you're gone? You can't take money with you when you die, but
actually say
you can.
That money is a tool.
Mm-hmm. And so that's for those who are listening and who aren't sure of limiting beliefs. Like we've been talking about, like, hey, what about this? What about that? What would be your specific definition to those who aren't quite sure what a limiting belief is?
Okay, so the simplest way of putting it is that a limiting belief are those beliefs that we have in our head that have. So first of all, let me rewind. Once we get into this world, everything we see, everything we hear is in our brain. It never goes out. So you might be able to remember that your mom had a red skirt when you were 3 years old. So if you saw a red skirt that looked like it, you would know that you would feel like I've seen this red skirt before, even if it was 20, 30 years ago. So everything is somewhere registered in our brain. And once it goes in there, it doesn't come out. You might not notice it, except a trigger comes and it brings it to you. That's why you hear some voices and you say, oh, this voice sounds familiar, even without seeing the face, because it might be a voice that you've heard before. So some of these beliefs, like I had used myself as an example, are things that you've constantly heard and they've registered in your brain. Some of it are from actions or inactions of people around you. Everyone around you just puts things in your head. Now, some of it stick, and sometimes you really don't even know that it's operating, you're operating in that level. So I'll use another example. So those beliefs actually hold you back. And sometimes you don't know you have those beliefs until you start to probe, or you get a coach who starts to ask you questions, and it brings it to your awareness. I would say you go on a self-awareness journey. Growing up, my granddad always used to say that we must work hard for our money. In my adult life, when I thought about it, I realized that he probably meant nothing comes easy. Because he would say you must work hard, don't cut corners, don't cheat people. I believe what he was trying to do was imbibe those disciplines, those ethics in us of being honest and all that. The way my brain registered it was that I had to work physically hard. So for a long time, if I didn't have work to do, or maybe I had like just an hour's work in a day, I felt that I wasn't going to earn, or I didn't deserve to earn, or I was going to be poor because I haven't physically worked hard,
Uh-huh.
And I found out that I felt I needed to always be busy, until I started asking myself questions, and I said to myself, no, half the time you're actually busy. You're busy doing nothing. You're not productive, so you need to work smart. So that's a clear example of beliefs in our head. So we say to us, we take it by inference. Some people would think that, oh, I'm not convincing enough, so there's no need going to pitch for the job. Sometimes we're going to pitch for the job and we already feel they're not going to listen to us, or we're not going to get it. And we forget that whatever we think actually comes out in our aura and the way that we present ourselves. And people are able to catch on it when we do that. And then it manifests.
Oh, 100%. And just by you explaining all that reminds me, I think it was Jim Rohn who said it. It's like the top 5 people you spend the most time with is the sum of who you are. Absolutely. And by those spending the most time with those people, like what you mentioned earlier, we tend to adopt those traits and mix it into ourselves. And we don't notice half the time until we put ourselves in a different environment. And I definitely can relate to that, of not realizing a lot of like the generational trauma and the toxic traits that I had until I separated myself and lived halfway across the world. I'm like, oh, that's not a good thing. Let's fix that. And so that's something for our listeners to remember, is like, take an inventory of who you spend the most time with, and do you want to be like them? Is that the ideal person you want to be like? If not, then it's okay to love people from afar. No shame in that. And since we discussed like how to positively overcome like limiting beliefs and examples of limiting beliefs, there are so many tools out there trying to explain to us, here, do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and that's the way you can overcome it. But that doesn't work for everyone. There's no one size fits all. So I'm curious, for you, what are some popular steps that you learned about and you tried, but didn't work for you?
Let me see. I'm trying to think of one that didn't work for me. I think I've made all of them work for me. There's some that didn't work for me for a very long time. All of them work for me now. The truth is, because I coach and I train people on it, I try very hard to use it on myself so that when I am talking about it, I'm just not speaking what has been written online or in a textbook.
Leading by example.
Absolutely. So for the longest time, you know that thing they say you should face the mirror and talk to yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
I would never suggest it to anyone because I had tried it severally. And I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and then you say to yourself, oh, I'm beautiful and I'm going out today. And I'm saying it and I'm like, why are you deceiving yourself? Look at your head. You know?
I shouldn't laugh, but I felt the same way. I'm like, yes, you're beautiful, you're gorgeous, you're amazing.
So for the longest time, I said that I'm very critical of myself. So for the longest time, I would use other techniques and avoid that mirror one. And I think it was last year or 2 years ago, I heard it again. I can't remember which of my coaches talked about it. And I was like, listen, so many people can be speaking about something and all of them are wrong and you're right. Maybe, just maybe, you have already made up your mind, which is what happens to a lot of us. You've already made up your mind and planned what the outcome is before you even start. So now, free your mind, empty yourself, which is what I've learned to do, because a lot of times we go into doing those things with baggage. Empty yourself and just do it. Do it exactly the way they have said. Don't try to analyze. Don't try to be smart. And that was how I started. And to be quite honest, it works.
Yes. And do you also think it's a sense of doing something that's unfamiliar? Because the average person won't just look in the mirror and say, hey, how you doing? Sexy, you know? So especially if you have a lower perception of yourself,
absolutely,
it's not comfortable. Like I remember when I first started the whole mirror journey, like over the past several years, I would get anxiety or I would even cry at some point of like, you're trying to say that I got to say I'm beautiful. What is this? You know, or I got to say I'm smart. Like I'm not used to hearing these things, especially from myself. So it makes it so uncomfortable. But it's like exposure therapy. Once you keep doing it and you keep saying it, eventually it just becomes a part of your everyday life. And you're like, I am kind of cute. Look at that. I may have a big head, but I'm going to show that head off.
So Joseph says, as you speak, so you feel. As you feel, so you do. As you do, so you have.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh. Can we say that one more time?
As you speak, so you feel. As you feel, so you do. As you do, so you have.
That's amazing. And that is the perfect segue into our break. We shall return in just a moment, guys. And we're back for the second half of our podcast. So the first half was just such a gem dropping moment, and we ended that on such a good quote, and I'm obsessed. But now let's transition into another portion of the show where earlier in our introduction we talked about you mentoring young African girls, and I feel like mentoring is such an under or a misunderstood type of concept. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, like your mentoring program and journey and how you got into that?
Okay, so the Global Give Back Circle is, so I do, would I say, three non-profit, and one is a paid one that I run in my business, and that's actually for entrepreneurs. The Global Give Back Circle actually started from the eastern part of Africa and has spread to the whole of Africa. And MasterCard, the MasterCard Foundation has actually taken it up as well. What it is about is the young girls, especially in the rural areas, a lot of them need guidance in terms of courses to study, soft skills like PowerPoint and all that, direction to go for those who are about to graduate in terms of work. Some of them have parents who are not particularly educated, so they also need that support to guide them even emotionally. So that's what we do in the Global Give Back Circle. Because it's all over Africa, there's no, actually, I haven't even mentored anyone on that platform that is from Nigeria, because the girls are given to different mentors. Most of my mentees have come from Kenya, South Africa, and Ghana. That's where most of my mentees have come from. So, but they're all over the place. And it gives me a lot of joy, and it also exposes me, because it's so easy to get caught up, especially with me. I work from home, so I'm caught up in this my little room, and it's almost like I don't know what's going on in the rest of the world. And that just, gives you, I don't have a daughter, so it also just gives me a different view of what girls go through, and all that peer group pressure and things like that. It's actually fun.
And what is it like being like, I know you said it brings you joy and like it's kind of like some happiness as well working with the young girls, but how has that journey been like being in a space of a mentor? It's like, okay, I'm going to be helping these girls. What can I do to get them up higher? How can I connect them to this, that, or third? Or how has the girls' journey been since you've been mentoring them?
Oh yeah, so the good thing is on the MasterCard Foundation called Baobab, they also run a few trainings. So I'll suggest trainings to them. I'll also monitor them to know if they did the training, how that they're using the training to help themselves. And sometimes with mentoring, sometimes it's not as if you're doing anything particularly like ABC. Sometimes those girls just want to know that there's someone listening to them, and that when they want to talk, there's someone, because I operate an open door policy. So I let them send me messages at any time. I'll let them know that I'll reply immediately I get it. If I don't reply, just know that I'm busy. But a lot of times I make sure that I'm able to at least give them a quick response. And that just makes them feel heard.
Yeah, it's very important, especially at the younger ages, to have someone in their life that allows their voices to be heard. Because nowadays, like there's still that old saying of children should be seen, not heard. The voices aren't valued as much. Kids are shut down. They're like, oh, well, they're kids. They don't know anything. So it's wonderful to hear that you are allowing these young girls a space to express themselves, to allow themselves to be creative, and remind them that they are valued and they are worthy of doing anything they want to. And I'm curious as to, as a mentor, what do you look for in a mentee? Like, how do you choose your the girls who you decide to mentor, or the people you decide to mentor?
Okay, so on the Global Give Back Circle, I don't have much of a choice. I'm allowed to say that I wouldn't work with someone, but I don't know what reason I would give. There has to be a fantastic reason. The only reasons that I know that I can give on that platform is maybe internet connectivity or something like that. I don't know that I would reject for that, because of the way it's structured. For the girl to be on that platform, it means she's ready to be mentored. If you're asking me ordinarily, like with my own mentorship, even with my mentorship program, which is not for young girls, they're for like age 35 up, I also do not take on people simply because they can afford to pay. I want to be sure that you're committed to the journey. Just like we were saying that money is not everything. There's some people who really don't mind paying for several. It's like gym instructors. You find people who pay 6 gym instructors and don't use any, you know. So for some people, it's not about the money. They'll pay. For me, I could actually take you on if you don't pay and you're committed. So I'm going to see results.
Mm-hmm. And how important do you think a mentor is to someone's growth and development? And does that shift as a person is older or younger?
Look, it's funny. And that was why I went like that. For the longest time, and this is me, I think I'm just a difficult person. For the longest time, I used to say, please, I have no mentors. I'm my own mentor. Why? And obviously, I started my personal development journey, and I don't know of anyone that has more mentors than I do. I have a mentor for practically every aspect of my life. It's important to have someone you can trust. There are different kinds of mentors, but it's important that you have someone you can trust and someone that you know that has your back. And at different points in time in your life, like I said, I have several mentors for different things. So if I wanted someone to mentor me in the area of marriage and home, I wouldn't be looking for a single guy. I'll be looking for someone that has qualities I would want to emulate.
So basically, specifying, if I want to grow in my relationship, interpersonal communications, or in my professional or my personal life, you would have someone different who specializes in that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. So hopefully, like, hearing that, our listeners can take from this is be cautious who you ask to be your mentor, but also be prepared to do the work and not waste people's time.
Absolutely. It's a two-way street.
Yes. And as we bring this to a close, I feel like that would be a perfect segue. Are there any final thoughts or advice you would have to our listeners out there who want to get a mentor or are trying to push past their limiting beliefs? Do you have any final advice or words for them?
Okay, I usually always, in everything that I do, always point out that you should know what your values are. And that's something that a lot of us never sit down to actually put in writing. So if you ask people what are your core values, a lot of people start thinking. And if they're not thinking, they'll drill out things like honesty, things like that. And which they're not bad values, but I said to them, write these values down and ask yourself questions around it. So if you say, for instance, punctuality is a value to you, then you shouldn't be attending meetings late. If you attend meetings late and you think punctuality is your value, what it is that it's an aspirational value. It's not a core value. And if it's an aspirational value, then you start to make efforts, or you now are able to know what steps to take to make it a core value. When you know what your values are, then you can begin to look for mentors who share the same values with you. You can't work with people that do not share the same, that you don't share the same values with. Otherwise, you just will not agree. So you 100%. Need to know who you are, what you're looking for, and where you're coming from before you start there.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. And I'm definitely going to be taking those words to heart too on my journey. And so, all right, with that last piece of advice, that is just such a gem-dropping moment that I'm like, I feel called out. I feel like that resonated with me a lot. So
I'm happy you did.
I appreciate it. It's interesting going into the new year, as we're in 2023. So many like New Year's resolutions are coming about and people wanting to take those steps forwards into a better life. And having a mentor seems to be a very viable option, or very good option, especially in the beginning of a new page, a new chapter of your life, especially at the beginning of the new year. So I really appreciate you coming out to the podcast and sharing your story and your history and your amazing gem dropping ideas and advice with our listeners, and giving me your final thoughts. So I'm sure there are going to be many people who would love to connect with you and follow you for more amazingness. Yes. How can they find you?
So I'm on Facebook as Omu Oblior. My company page is Thrive with Omu. So you'll find a Thrive with Omu page and a Thrive with Omu group. The group is a private group because I like to keep it private so that people feel safe. So I need to be sure that you fit in before I'll let you to the group. On Instagram, I'm Thrive with Omu as well. On YouTube, Thrive with Omu. And on LinkedIn, it's Omu Obilor. Otherwise, you can go to my website, which is www.thrivewithomu.com, and everything is on there.
Everything is consistent. I love that. And don't worry, you guys, down in the show notes, and if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll have all of Omu's contact information in the description and in the show notes, so that way you guys can check her out and more of the awesome things she has to offer. So on that note, again, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode, Omu. And thank you guys for listening as well to everything she has to say. So yes, thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Melanin Muses podcast. To hear more, please subscribe and follow our podcast wherever you listen to us. And be sure to check us out on our Instagram at the Melanin Muses podcast, at Melanin Muses podcast, as well as our official YouTube channel for more content. We shall see you next week. This is Nikki B signing off, and
bye.
Bye.